Cadê a Karina e o Gustavo? Aqui. Hey. Hey, how are you? Great. It was good.
I've got a bit confused because the agenda I've got is different.
Oh, yeah, it changes every day.
I was lucky I was here.
I was responsible for it. So every hour I change that. Oh, yeah. I want to talk to you about that, about the presentation. Yeah. So you're staying, right? Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah, good. Oi, gente. Boa tarde aí a todos. Aos que não estavam aqui, boa tarde. Aos que estavam, boa tarde também. Então...
Para colocar na palestra? Será que eles sabem que eu estou televisão? Oi? Karina. Karina. Bom, pessoal, boa tarde. Na verdade, essa é uma breve sessão que tem como principal objetivo conversar um pouco mais com vocês, estudantes, pós-docs, jovens pesquisadores, para que entendam um pouquinho mais sobre o que é a Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia. Porque, de uma maneira geral, a gente ouve falar da Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia muito em razão dos congressos. E a gente vai entender que, ou eu espero convencê-los, de que a SBI é além, ou muito além, desses eventos. Então, na verdade, o Gustavo ia fazer um breve histórico sobre a SBI. A gente achou que ia ficar um pouco longo e confuso, várias pessoas falando, né, nessa sessão. Para vocês entenderem um pouquinho do histórico da SBI, ela fez 50 anos em 2022, ou seja, foi fundada em 1972. Nós agora estamos na 24ª diretoria da SBI. O primeiro presidente foi o professor Otto Bier, foi nas duas primeiras diretorias presidente. E dessas 24 diretorias, nós tivemos apenas 5 presidentes mulheres. A professora Antoniana Kretli, Aldina Barral e, para nossa alegria, as últimas ou penúltimas, antepenúltimas diretorias foram de mulheres. Então, Cláudia Brodsky, Ana Caetano, agora Maria Bellio e a próxima sou eu. Tá? Bom, então, a SBI ela tem como uma missão, que também é bastante difundida, que é promover o avanço e a difusão da imunologia no Brasil, contribuir para a formação de recursos humanos e fomentar a aplicação do conhecimento em imunologia para o bem-estar da sociedade. Os nossos valores, né, são excelência científica, então somos sempre comprometidos com a qualidade da ciência, né? Estamos, especialmente nos congressos, exatamente vulneráveis às críticas relacionadas exatamente visando essa excelência científica. Educação e formação, colaboração e inclusão e um compromisso com a saúde pública. Então, o que a SBI faz para ela alcançar, né, essas missões conectadas com esses valores? Nós temos várias ações, né, ações que são voltadas tanto para a articulação da comunidade imunológica, quanto ações para levar conhecimentos ou zelar pelo conhecimento em imunologia na sociedade em geral, né? Então, como ações, a gente tem os congressos, que são os nossos congressos anuais, também temos simpósios regionais e, eventualmente, congressos internacionais, sendo o primeiro deles organizado com a presidência do professor Jorge Calil. Estamos agora aplicando para que possamos organizar a segunda edição no Brasil, em 2031, em Florianópolis, no Centro de Convenções em Florianópolis. Bom, além disso, né, nós também, cada vez mais, estamos preocupados em fomentar cursos, webinars, e temos um podcast, que é o podcast da Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia, que é o Imunicast. A gente está um pouquinho preguiçoso e estamos agora ensaiando uma nova edição desse Imunicast, porque a nossa linguagem desse podcast ainda é uma linguagem muito para dentro da nossa comunidade. A gente está ensaiando aí uma reforma nesse podcast para que a gente possa também trazer alguns episódios para levar o mastigado da imunologia para a sociedade em geral. Nós também temos uma atuação como representação em comitês científicos, produzimos conteúdos tanto para mídias quanto para blogs e fomentamos a formação de jovens imunologistas. Isso nos é um valor muito caro, tá? Então, a Maria vai falar um pouco mais para vocês sobre o congresso, mas os nossos congressos, especialmente os nossos congressos e os nossos workshops regionais, simpósios regionais, eles são todos pensados para fomentar a formação desses jovens imunologistas. Então, desde os convidados estrangeiros que estão atuando nas linhas aí de interesse, né, atuais de fronteira, até a organização desses eventos, de forma que as sessões dos alunos, tanto de posters como express presentations, aconteçam em horário nobre, para que realmente eles possam se conectar com os pesquisadores da sua linha de interesse. Tá? Bom, e, mais recentemente, também tem ficado mais claro as ações da SBI na difusão da imunologia para a sociedade, especialmente em momentos de crise, né, de saúde pública, como foi o que aconteceu agora durante a pandemia. E, justamente durante a pandemia, o professor Ricardo Gazinelli, aqui, que comemora os seus 30 anos de laboratório, foi o presidente no início e no auge dessa pandemia, né? Então, como vocês podem ver por essa foto, né, essas eram as nossas reuniões. E está aqui, né, olha a cara da diretoria, né? Os únicos felizes, vocês podem ver, que são exatamente aqueles que estavam com as câmeras fechadas, né? São os felizes durante essa reunião aqui, né? Então, realmente foi um momento muito desafiador e contamos, como já mencionado aqui, com a enorme habilidade do Ricardo, né, e da diretoria como um todo. Então, faziam parte dessa diretoria Dario, Cristina, Zeca. Então, nós compunhamos essa diretoria e foi fundamental essa habilidade do Ricardo de rapidamente conectar as pessoas certas para que a gente pudesse realizar uma série de ações rápidas e coordenadas, né? Como, por exemplo, cobertura da pandemia nas redes sociais, que a gente não estava acostumado. Então, não era um público que a gente acessava cotidianamente. E nem dominávamos, né, essas mídias sociais. Então, criamos uma força-tarefa contra a Covid, mapeando, né, fizemos um mapeamento dinâmico que reuniu diversos grupos brasileiros de pesquisa. Fomos convidados para publicar uma opinion na Nature Immunology, falando como cada uma das sociedades estava lidando com esse momento da pandemia. Nós lançamos um site com exposição virtual da Covid-19, criamos comitês científicos com vários especialistas da área, criamos um departamento de imunologia clínica para trazer os dados reais dos pacientes graves da pandemia e fizemos uma série de notas de esclarecimento num momento bastante desafiador também, politicamente falando. Né? E, além de tudo, como o próprio Calil acabou de mencionar, nós fizemos ações bastante contundentes pró-vacinas num momento onde o movimento anti-vax estava absolutamente em alta. Que mais? Tivemos, não apenas, obviamente, a diretoria, mas a sociedade, os membros da sociedade como um todo, uma presença constante nas mídias, aparecendo tanto em programas de televisão, quanto em programas de rádio, entrevistas e revistas e tudo mais. E foi absolutamente fundamental, né, essa presença dos imunologistas nessas mídias. Então, essa situação nos trouxe um contato com um público diferente daquele que a gente estava rotineiramente acostumado. E também nos trouxe à luz, cada vez mais, a responsabilidade que a Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia tem ao difundir os conhecimentos, né, em imunologia. Porque as fake news, elas nem sempre nascem ou da boca de pessoas maldosas. Muitas vezes, elas nascem de informações que não são passadas da maneira correta ou de uma forma completa. Tá? Os nossos desafios e visão do futuro, na verdade, a gente já faz, mas é continuar tentando democratizar o acesso às informações em imunologia, ampliar a diversidade regional e de gênero, a internacionalização. Eu acho que, como mensagem aqui final, eu acho que é bem importante que vocês entendam, na verdade, que estas ações e essa missão, ela é nossa. Ela não é do presidente, do vice-presidente ou da diretoria. Ela é de uma construção desta comunidade, né? E eu, pessoalmente, vejo, né, a Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia como a minha casa principal. Eu tenho uma palavra para mim que representa a Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia, que é pertencimento. Então, realmente, foi na SBI que eu encontrei colaboradores absolutamente fundamentais na minha jornada e os meus melhores amigos, né? Então, veja, olha que carinha de nenenzinhos que eles eram, né? Cresceram, tem cabelinho branco, alguns nem têm cabelinho mais, mas desde sempre, né, estivemos juntos. Então, eu espero que todos vocês entendam a importância que é pertencer, né, e ajudar a criar esta sociedade cada vez mais forte e comprometida com a nossa missão. É isso.
Ok, Karina, brigadíssimo. Antes de passar a palavra para a Maria, eu vou dar licença aqui para o Calil endereçar algumas...
Anos 80, só vou contar algumas curiosidades da sociedade. Lá pelos anos 80, nós fazíamos as reuniões lá em São Lourenço, ou Caxambu, por lá, sempre que eram as nossas reuniões. Né? Vocês lembram disso? Mas que São Lourenço, você não pegou São Lourenço. Mas aí nós fomos uma vez em São Lourenço, num hotel, e aí teve um problema no hotel e faltou luz no hotel. E aí não dava para passar slide. Vocês lembram slide? Carrossel? Não era carrossel, era ainda aqueles assim compridinho. Então, você não viu? Não, mas é por isso que eu estou falando. Então, tinha carrossel. E aí nós não podíamos passar slides. E aí o congresso todo mudou para outro hotel. Isso foi, acho que 82, 83. Aí o que nós fizemos? Pô, mudar todo o congresso para um hotel. Aí nós alugamos um ônibus, botamos todo mundo dentro, coube todo mundo num ônibus e a gente mudou para o outro hotel. Então, naquela época, a Sociedade Brasileira de Imunologia era um ônibus. 80 e poucos. O que eu acho que teve alguns pontos marcantes aí no desenvolvimento da sociedade? Um foi um curso que a UAS promoveu no Guarujá. Eu acho que foi em 85. Se alguém souber... O Guarujá e o Yakult foi outra coisa. 85 teve um congresso, uma reunião da UAS, que foi muito interessante, porque trouxe cientistas de primeiríssima linha para o Brasil, que interagiram muito com o pessoal, e muita gente foi fazer pós-doc ou doutorado lá fora. Nessa década de 80, a minha geração foi muito para o exterior para aprender imunologia. Nós tínhamos imunologia de Chagas no Brasil, só. Se você quisesse fazer imunologia, tinha que fazer imunologia de Chagas. Até hoje eu faço imunologia de Chagas. Mas tinha que fazer imunologia de Chagas. Mas quem quisesse fazer outra coisa tinha que sair. Eu queria fazer imunogenética e eu fui para o exterior. E os outros também. Muita gente da nossa geração foi para o exterior. E eu acho que isso, quando o pessoal voltou, deu uma melhorada geral na imunologia no país. Aí nós tivemos essa reunião da Yakult, tivemos essa reunião da UAS, tivemos as reuniões da Yakult, que foram super importantes, porque traziam jovens cientistas para serem formados e também saíram para fazer doutorado e pós-doc fora, e a sociedade começou realmente a crescer. Foi nessa época que começou a crescer o número de pessoas. Um ponto que eu acho que é fundamental é que, em 2007, nós fizemos o Congresso Brasileiro aqui no Brasil, contra todas as possibilidades. Porque, na eleição do Conselho da UAS, nós perdemos de 10-2. E aí, no jantar naquela noite, na Suécia, levantou um cara lá e disse, mas por que escolheram o Japão e não o Brasil? Eu tenho mais 2 minutinhos? Me diga quantos minutos eu tenho, 2? Aí os caras disseram, não, porque no Japão tem mais dinheiro, tem mais imunologista bom, etc., etc. O que fez com que as forças contra o eixo, ainda remanescentes contra o eixo, fizessem uma campanha contra a decisão do Conselho, que nunca tinha acontecido. E aí nós fizemos uma votação, é importante você saber da história, aí teve feito uma votação da Assembleia Geral, que é soberana, e nós ganhamos por 1 voto. Só que os japoneses disseram, e eu não sei se eles não tinham razão, que tinha latino-americano que votou 2 vezes. E não é, olha, e não eram só os latino-americanos, porque nós tínhamos os nossos antepassados que estavam juntos com a gente. Os italianos também votaram 2 vezes. E, bom, nós ganhamos por uma voz. Aí, junto com o Fritz Meltzer, que queria levar para o Japão, eles invalidaram a votação. E aí nós votamos de novo, pela primeira vez, eu acho, votamos via internet. Era super novidade isso, nós estamos falando aí, começo dos anos 2000. E aí nós fizemos, quer dizer, os latino-americanos em geral e os ingleses fizeram uma campanha mundial e teve uma outra votação e ganhamos por quantos votos? 1 voto. Bom, eu não devo dizer para vocês que os japoneses tentaram boicotar o nosso congresso, mas não boicotaram, enfim. Depois disso, no Japão, eu fui eleito vice-presidente, futuro presidente da UAS. Os japoneses não me convidaram para nenhuma sessão, nem o almoço, nem o jantar. Eu era uma pessoa mal vista dentro do congresso, porque persona não grata, porque nós organizamos coisas. Mas a nossa sociedade, depois de 2007, teve várias coisas. Primeiro, os congressos sempre beirando aí as 1.000 pessoas, e não mais as 100, 150, beirando as 1.000 pessoas. Tivemos uma participação muito grande na formação. Nós fomos os criadores da latino-americana e cada vez fomos mais fortes. Agora a Valdereza vai ser presidente, já é? Já vai ser, né? Já é. Valdereza vai ser presidente. E internacionalizamos. Porque, quando eu era presidente, eu consegui colocar várias pessoas, vários brasileiros, nos diferentes comitês da UAS, que estão até hoje. E a gente começou esse processo real de internacionalização. É importante que vocês saibam disso, porque acho que a imunologia brasileira cresceu, é muito boa, e teve alguns momentos que foram realmente marcantes. Eu trouxe alguns, assim, porque o Gustavo pediu para eu falar, mas eu acho que são momentos que foram importantes à sociedade, e ela tem crescido, espero que ela cresça muito mais. Acho que nós temos contribuído bastante internacionalmente. É isso. Obrigado.
Obrigado, Calil. Então, agora eu vou chamar a Maria para apresentar o próximo congresso. Espero vê-los todos em breve em Búzios.
Então, boa tarde a todos. Eu tenho que dizer que eu estou muito feliz de estar aqui também, nessa homenagem ao Ricardo. Ele me pediu para falar da SBI, então eu não vou falar do período, né, em que nós colaboramos, mas eu tenho muito que agradecer ao Ricardo também, que sempre foi muito generoso comigo. E, então, muito obrigada, Ricardo, e parabéns por toda... mas eu vou falar aqui da SBI, que foi o que ele me pediu para fazer. Próximo. Então, eu estou atualmente na presidência, né, da SBI. A cada 2 anos a gente muda a diretoria, que é itinerante, né? Então, Rio, São Paulo, Minas Gerais, Bahia, né, se revezam aí na diretoria. E a gente tem uma página, né, na internet. Esse aqui é o endereço, eu aumentei em vermelho para ficar mais visível. Então, como vocês veem aqui, vocês podem saber mais sobre a história da SBI e conhecer melhor as nossas atividades. Também, então, uma coisa importante, a gente promove cursos, então todos vocês fiquem ligados. Eu acho que o próximo é um exemplo. Então, agora em agosto, a gente vai ter um curso de imunologia de mucosa com dois módulos, um básico e um avançado. Esse curso é online e é gratuito para os membros associados, né, para os sócios da SBI. Então, a gente quer muito que todos vocês se entusiasmem em fazer parte, né, desse time, dessa comunidade. Então, eu vou falar rapidinho do congresso, né, do nosso próximo congresso. Todo ano a gente tem um congresso anual, e nos últimos anos tem sido sempre... É um congresso internacional, nós geralmente temos mais de 40, 50 speakers vindos de vários países, né, entre os tops. Então, esse é o nosso próximo congresso. Ele vai acontecer em Búzios, no estado do Rio de Janeiro. Vai ser de 13 a 17 de outubro. E a SBI também é super ativa nas redes sociais, né? Então, esse aqui é o endereço no Instagram, no X, mas eu sei que a galera jovem é mais de Instagram, então sigam a SBI. Vocês vão ter sempre muitas informações, não só sobre a própria SBI, mas sobre outras atividades acontecendo no país e no exterior, né? Congressos, simpósios, cursos. Então, assim, acho que vale muito a pena ficar ligado, porque tem várias oportunidades, né, que vocês podem ficar sabendo dessa maneira. Nosso congresso, como a Karina já disse, a gente dá muita importância para os jovens, né? Então, nossos congressos agora têm cerca de 1.000 pessoas inscritas e mais ou menos 600 pôsteres. Então, a gente tem 3 dias, ou melhor, 3 noites de pôsteres, né? Então, mais de 200 pôsteres por noite, o que faz o ambiente ser muito animado. Então, é uma grande oportunidade, como a Karina também já mencionou, né, de estar fazendo networking, né, de conhecer cientistas não só do exterior, mas também de todo o país, né, e conseguir um estágio, uma bolsa, né, enfim, é uma coisa que eu acho que é muito importante. A gente está perdoando a dívida de alguns sócios que esqueceram de pagar o ano passado, né, os estudantes, enfim. Aqui vocês também têm informações sobre isso, como se atualizar. E, rapidamente, então, acho que uma coisa importante falar é que, antes do congresso, a gente vai ter outras atividades. Uma dessas atividades é um simpósio satélite em vacinas. A gente também vai ter um pré-curso em células T reguladoras, né, com speakers de vários lugares do mundo também. Mas o simpósio satélite, assim como o curso, eles começam antes. Eles vão começar no dia 12, né, de outubro, 12 e 13. Então, rapidinho aqui, então, 12 de outubro à tarde, né, começa com o Ricardo abrindo o simpósio satélite, né, tem várias pessoas do CTVacinas que vão falar. A gente vai ter uma mesa de tecnologia de vacina de mRNA. Depois, no dia... Esse aqui ficou fora de foco, desculpa, mas, enfim, é só vocês entrarem lá, seja na rede social ou na página, que vocês vão ver isso melhor. Depois a gente vai ter uma mesa na segunda-feira de manhã sobre vacinas contra doenças negligenciadas. E na segunda-feira à tarde, a gente tem várias pessoas falando da resposta imunitária às vacinas, né? São jovens, tem 3 jovens brasileiros que estão no exterior, que são PI no exterior, né? E que vão falar sobre esse tema. Temos pessoas do Butantan, pessoas do INCOR que também vão falar, então, assim, estão todos convidados a participarem. Aqui só um breve os keynotes que a gente vai ter, só rapidamente, para vocês dizer, entre eles o Caetano Reis de Souza, que foi o pós-doc no Alan Sher, né? Tá, não, já estou acabando. E pronto, então acabei com a SBI. So I will move to English because now. So the Brazilian Society of Immunology is doing is conferring an award to Dr. Alan Sher. So I was not fortunate enough to be one of the many Brazilians that were mentored by Alan. But somehow I feel connected through my interactions with Ricardo. So, and I'm going to read the letter that we wrote to you. So, dear Dr. Sher, it is with great pleasure that the Brazilian Society for Immunology confers upon you the SBI International Honorary Member Award in recognition of your dedication, commitment, and leadership, which have resulted in outstanding contributions to the advancement of the field of immunology and the understanding of the pathogenesis of infectious diseases. We are also grateful for your tireless efforts in fostering collaborations with Brazilian scientists, as well as for your exceptional mentorship of Brazilian students and postdoctoral fellows in your laboratory at the NIH in the USA. In addition, your frequent participation in conferences and meetings across Brazil, many of which you have helped to organize, has served as a profound source of inspiration for students and researchers alike, significantly enriching the development of immunology in our country. So we are very grateful. Why I'm a very emotional person, sorry for that. So this award is both a demonstration of our gratitude and a formal recognition of the remarkable influence you have exerted in the field of immunology, as well as the enduring impact you have made on the Brazilian immunology community. We are honored to acknowledge your scientific achievement and to celebrate you as the first recipient of the International Honorary Member Award of our scientific society. So please, Alan, we have something for you.
Someone needs to take a picture. I've been through this before. That's good. Wonderful. Just go ahead. Go ahead.
You need to sit down.
I need to sit down again? Okay.
Move forward.
Okay.
Oh, you can sit over there.
All right.
And then from... You're going to talk from here?
Yeah, that's fine.
So you can... Hello? Okay. So we get into the last presentation, and I think it's the presentation that we all expecting. Alan Sher was given a visiting professor fellowship from the IEAT, which is the Institute of Advanced Transdisciplinary Studies. So what I'll do now, I'll transfer the microphone to Professor Patrícia Kawarki. She's a professor in philosophy, and she's the current director of the IEAT. And so she'll talk a little bit about the IEAT. On these last days, she experimented some of the Ricardo anxiety on the... So the visitor, I'm sending her messages at 10 in the night during the weekend, and but at the end, everything is working perfectly. So she really was very good in organizing this, and really we're very pleased that Alan was selected as one of the fellows. That I have to tell you was a very strong competition. So I'll pass to the...
Thank you. Thank you, Ricardo. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great joy and pleasure. We open today's IEAT conference by Professor Alan Sher, who joined us at UFMG as the visiting chair of the Institute for Advanced Transdisciplinary Studies, the IEAT. Having Professor Sher here with us is both a celebration and a recognition of a kind of science that is committed, transdisciplinary, and grounded in the international collaboration. I would like to begin by sincerely thanking Professor Ricardo Gazinelli, our host in this partnership with the Institute of Biological Science and the Center for Vaccine Technology at UFMG, CTVacinas. This visit is only possible thanks to his generous support and vision, which faithfully reflects the spirit of the IEAT chair. As you know, Professor Alan Sher is a world-renowned authority in the immunoparasitology, with groundbreaking contributions to our understanding of the immune response to Leishmania and Toxoplasma gondii. For decades, he was worked at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease in the United States, and is widely respected for his deep commitment to supervising and encouraging young researchers, including many Brazilian students, some of whom come from our UFMG. His visit to our institution at this moment carries special meaning. Under the current U.S. government, we are once again witnessing troubling signs. Attacks on science, threats to academic freedom, restrictions on international exchange, and growing hostility toward foreign students in American universities. In this context, Professor Sher's presence sends a strong message. His career and his actions remind us the power of science to build bridges, to welcome difference, and to resist disinformation. We also know that the field of immunology, especially its connection to vaccine development, has been one of the main targets of denialism and misinformation campaigns promoted by obscurantism forces who seek to discredit the science through fake news and social media manipulation. All the more reason to honor and celebrate today a scientist who has stood firm in the defense of a science that is rigorous, collaborative, and globally engaged. This is exactly the mission of the IEAT chair: to foster dialogue across disciplines, to promote critical internalization, and to highlight scientific work that serves the common good. By welcoming Professor Alan Sher today, we proudly reaffirm that mission with enthusiasm, with responsibility, and with hope. Thank you very much, Professor Sher, for accepting our invitation and for sharing your experience and generosity with us. And thank you all for being here. Now, I would like to give the floor to Professor Ricardo Gazinelli, who will introduce Professor Alan Sher. Thank you.
I'll be brief. I think it was in January, Alan said, well, I need to come to Brazil. And everything he tells me, I take as an order So I said, well, let's find a way to do this. And I visited the site of IEAT, and we said, well, we're supposed to be a transdisciplinary project. And I was talking to Luis Alcantara, who'll be here tomorrow, and I say, how can we make this transdisciplinary? And we got this great idea to have something that's about climate change, the emergence and re-emergence of infectious disease, and the immune response. That's, of course, we all know is a critical point for our survival. So I mentioned that to Alan, and he said, oh, that's great, because I cannot talk about this in the United States. So, saying that, I think, well, I'm really suspect about talking to Alan, and I think he'll really talk about his history today, right? But Alan, I think it's 50 years. You told me it's 50 years, 40 years. It's almost 50 years that he collaborates with Brazil, and in a way, I don't know, I think it's true what I'm saying. He started at UFMG with my uncle, Giovanni Gazinelli. Giovanni was actually a biochemist, but he decided to become an immunologist. But he had a very important role on, as Alan liked to say, as the godfather of immunology in Minas Gerais. And I think with Khalil, I don't know, Khalil said that was not involved in founding but Giovanni was one of the founders of the Brazilian Society of Immunology. And since then, I mean, Rodrigo worked. Yeah, I can't give the talk for him, but so that's right. So anyway, I spent 5 years in Alan's lab, and I think the one person that gave the hand was Giovanni, and then after Giovanni, Alan really accepted me to go to his lab, and I think he made all difference on my career. I really learned immunology in his lab, and I had the opportunity to do great work, and he somehow guided me till today. So it's really a great pleasure. He has many awards. You can look at the internet about it. So anyway, Alan, we are very grateful that you are here, and I'm sure we all enjoy your talk.
Well, thank you both. I'm really honored by those remarks. That was beautiful, by the way. And also for the Society for the award. That was a big surprise. So thank you so much. I'm really deeply honored. And you'll see I've had connections with you guys over the years, the Immunology Society, and so it's particularly wonderful to have that. So I think someone can show me how to work the slides. Let's see. There it is. Look at that. Wonderful. So, see, I can speak a little bit of Portuguese. So this is just to tell you who I am. That's my current title. So just, I have to tell you at the very beginning that I closed my lab about 2 years ago, and I'm now officially retired, and after doing research for 59 years, and that was enough, let me tell you, and I was very fortunate to be able to hand over my resources to several of my own trainees, so that gave me a great succession plan. And I'm still at the NIH. I have an office, and I spend most of my time mentoring and young scientists and giving advice to my former colleagues who mostly ignore what I say. So And I have to say this, and it has to do with a lot of things, but my opinions do not represent the official viewpoint or policy of the NIH. And in fact, the fact that I'm retired is actually maybe a good thing in this context. So anyway, let's proceed. So Ricardo gave it a title, and I'm just going to change it quite a bit. And so what I'm going to talk about, let's just see if that, no, I do it from here. Yes. So, I go around giving mentoring lectures. I've done it actually in several countries now for young scientists. But today I get the treat of really focusing it on you people, and of which I know probably the most of all the different international groups that have worked with us over the years. And this is what I'm going to talk about. So how the 50 years, it was 50 years, Ricardo, you're right, of collaboration with Brazil and young Brazilian trainees fueled the important discoveries of my NIH laboratory. I owe you a lot, and helped build the careers of past and current leaders in Brazilian immunology and infectious disease. And I was really tickled to have two former fellows of mine give talks in this afternoon, just to see how successful they both have been. And really, this is the point. It's a success story. This is you're going to hear good stuff, okay, for a change. This is a success story that speaks to the power of international scientific collaboration, and it's something we all should be proud of. I'm proud of it. You should be proud of it too, as you'll see. Okay? So, a little bit about me. Oh, sorry. Yes, and this is what, for the people in the audience, what are the important lessons to be learned from what I'm going to tell you, and how can they help you, and what I mean you is the next generation of Brazilian scientists. So a bit about me, I'm not going to say much. So I actually have a Bachelor of Arts degree. I was not really interested in science when I started out, but I eventually did become that, in part because of some family influences. But I got my PhD at the University of California, San Diego, and I worked on immunoglobulin structure and diversity. I was basically an immunochemist. I postdoced at the National Institute for Medical Research in London, where I had decided after my PhD to go into parasitology. I was fascinated with it as an area that really needed the help of immunologists. And so I went to London to study there, actually in the same lab that Andy Simpson got his degree, his PhD degree in. I then spent the summer in working in Africa, which again fueled my interest in tropical disease and made me want to do more of that kind of work. Okay, so here we go. We're going to start. I'm going to tell you a story. You're going to see lots of people. A lot of the dates are probably wrong. Ricardo's going to help me correct them. But it all starts 50 years ago. And here's the interesting story. I was in a hotel in northern Italy going to a schistosomiasis meeting. I was a research associate. And I was trying to check into the hotel. And I couldn't understand a word they were saying. And there was this guy behind me on the line, and he introduced himself. He was also going to the conference. He said, "I'm Giovanni Gazzanelli." So I said, "Oh, can you talk to these Italians for me?" And he said, "I don't speak a word of Italian. I'm a Brazilian." So that was the beginning of my encounter with Brazilian science, right at that very moment. Okay, and that was a very important one because Giovanni is an important guy. He was the godfather. I would say, Khalil, I would say he's the godfather of parasitology, not necessarily immunology. I don't know what we want to say, but he certainly did get interested in immunology. And if you look at him, he kind of looks like a godfather, right? I mean, he has this kind of tough guy. For a very soft-spoken, wonderful, warm person, he has a tough guy kind of image. Anyway, very important meeting for me. So my first laboratory I was at Harvard Medical School, where I was for 4 years, and this is where again my contact with Brazil began in the actual laboratory, and my first people Brazilians that I actually worked with were Teresa Kipnis and Vilmar Dias da Silva. They came for a sabbatical in my department, and Teresa was assigned to my new laboratory, and which is absolutely wonderful for me. And interestingly, Vilmar, actually, I had a connection with Vilmar because he actually did his postdoc in my uncle's laboratory, and he was very important in discovering the structure of anaphylotoxins, which he did with my uncle. So this I got to know these two, and Teresa really wanted me to come here to Brazil, and I really I have to say that I really owe her a lot. She's the wonderful person who introduced me to Brazilian immunology, and I know that you have enormous respect for her as one of your founding people. And it's something about her, if I can just say something personal, Teresa had this incredible sense of people. She really understood people. She could see right through me, I knew that. She's a very kind-hearted person who meant well for everyone. And I still get sad when I think about losing her. But anyway, she knew Giovanni, and she said, I'm going to talk to Giovanni. We'll get you to come to Brazil. So I was all excited, and off I went. And and this was my first trip. Was here, right here to Belo Horizonte, and I had just a wonderful time. But I also combined it with some trips that Teresa had arranged to other people, other labs. So there's Giovanni, Juarez, Naftali, Sigmund Brenner. There's all sorts of other people that I can mention. One of my experiences was they took me to a football game. I'd never been to a Brazilian football game. And the Atléticos, who I gather are not very popular. Did I hear that today? But anyway, I got really sick. And it was something we ate in the restaurant before, churrasco before and it was something bad. A number of other people got sick. I got sick for days. They got sick for overnight because they're, it's immunology, right? So I told Giovanni about this, and he said, you have leishmaniasis. So that was Giovanni's sense of humor. So okay, so in the same trip, I went to Sao Paulo, where I, of course, saw Teresa and Vilmar again. I might have met Khalil there, I don't remember. And then went to Salvador, and that was just a wonderful time, and met other really wonderful future colleagues, the Bahals, Edgar Mittermeier-Reis, Andre Bafica, who was then a young trainee, and well, the highlight of my trip was it was Carnival. So they have a carnival in Salvador, and there's a Bloco, and it turns out that this is really funny. The medical school has a Bloco, and it's called the Bloco de Pathologia. So I got to dance in the Bloco de Pathologia, which was maybe the highlight of my life. So anyway, but this was the beginning of what was to be a lot of different collaborations, and. So at this point, I had moved from Harvard to the NIH, and I had a wonderful first laboratory there. My wife, Stephanie James, was with me at the time. David Sachs, who Andy may want to know, just got elected to the National Academy of Sciences. Phil Scott, who became heavily involved in Brazilian immunology later on, as you'll hear, and Andy Simpson. So these were all not Brazilians, except for one guy, Andy, who became a Brazilian. Little did he know at the time that when he came to the lab that he was going to wind up becoming a Brazilian, but he did, and he described to you eloquently his feelings about that this morning. So anyway, so who was my first trainee? Who was the first person to come to the lab as my trainee? And it was Rodrigo. And so he came, so he was part of the Gazzanelli Mafia, for sure, because he was married to a Gazzanelli. And he was a PhD student. I'd actually met him when I was here the first time. He was just just an undergraduate working in the lab. So he worked in my lab, but he got his degree through Johns Hopkins University. And anyway, he and his wife Andrea arrived in the middle of the winter in Washington, and my wife and I went to the airport to pick them up. And Andrea was dressed like she was going to carnival. She was like wearing, just ordinary summer Brazilian clothes. So the very first thing we did is we drove her to a department store and bought her a coat so she could stay warm in the winter. So I have a very vivid memory of this. Anyway, that picture, Ricardo and I have had big discussions about this picture, but it's the only picture I have of Rodrigo from that time. And Andy may remember this picture because he was in it. I cut him out. Anyway, this was him showing off his macho stuff and at the swimming pool. So anyway, so Rodrigo was very successful, and look at what happened to him. It's just amazing. I mean, he became not only an investigator, but the former director of Henry Hashu and vice president for research at Fiocruz. And we were all deeply saddened by his untimely death in 2023. And I know if he was here today, he would have been really would have loved to see what we did today. Anyway, so he was my first trainee in the lab, and I think he might have had some influence on Andy becoming a Brazilian too. Okay, so first sandwich student, another Mineira, or I'm Mineira, sorry, Leda, who came. Is Leda here by any chance? Yeah. How long were you? Is this date right? Is this date right? 1987. Hey, I got it. I guessed it. Very good. So she worked in my lab with Paul Brindley on schistosomiasis, published that paper. But she had a nice taste of the U.S. during this time and actually came back to do postdoc work with Phil Scott, another member of the lab at the University of Pennsylvania. She's now a professor here at UFMG. And one of the things I've really loved about Leda is her spirit. She's an activist. She cares. Wonderful person. It was great to have her in the lab with us. But anyway, that was our first sandwich student. I'm moving on, and this is going to be a steady stream of people here, so take a deep breath, okay? All right, so the next thing was a collaboration that Phil Scott and I had, actually this time in Salvador, with Algina, and we worked at the Hospital das Clínicas. We did a field study on leishmaniasis. I can't remember, and I just had dinner with Phil the other night. We can't remember the name of the community where we went out to look at to gather blood from patients, but it wasn't trace process, I don't think. But anyway, we studied T-cell responses in patients with different forms of cutaneous leishmaniasis, and I remember this very vividly. We gathered samples, and we arrived back in Salvador at around 1 in the morning. We had the samples, we had to process them, and with our terrible Portuguese, we somehow managed to get into the building, do the experiments and finish it about it. Now, in the summer course, and here comes the Ricardo section of the talk, and to Toxo. And so one day, Ricardo came in, and he was really, you know how Ricardo gets grumpy? He came in, he was really grumpy. I said, what's going on? He said, you know that experiment you wanted me to do? He says, the mice are all dying. And I said, what? And he was ready to give the whole thing up. Well, it turns out the mice were dying for that reason there, that without IL-10, you get IL-12 mediated immunopathology. And it cemented the idea that IL-10, this regulatory cytokine, could actually be host protective. It's protecting us from the pathology mediated by pathogens. This, to me, is a very important concept, and from my lab, I consider it one of the major discoveries. Okay, so moving on. Now we're moving around a bit. Hey, we're up to the 90s, so everybody sit tight. And this was an interesting collaboration on schistosomiasis with Tom Nguyen, who some of you may know, who's now at Pfizer in Cambridge, Massachusetts. This was a collaboration with Silvia Montenegro and the late Eridan Coutinho on splenic cytokine responses. So the idea was to look at schisto responses in the spleen of patients, and so there was I think, I can't remember if he was a pathologist or what, who was basically doing splenectomies on people who had or in automobile accidents in Recife, and a lot of them had schisto, and so he could actually give us schisto spleens, and so we did this collaboration, which was a lot of fun, and got to see another part of Brazil, and another Fiocruz Institute. Okay, next, here we go. Back to Bellio. Here's the next Brazilian who turned up, and that's Hilton Santiago, who was sent to us by Rodrigo, I believe. And he was a sandwich student. Do I have the dates right on this, Hilton? Are you there? He's not there. Is it okay? Okay, good. So he did work on T. cruzi, which is good, and something Ricardo and I eventually did do in T. cruzi. And then he like Leda, decided to come back, and this time to work at George Washington University, and then eventually came back to our department, who worked with Tom Nutman. Tom is just a brilliant clinical immunologist, and I think it was really good training for him there. And you all know what he's doing here. He's professor and director of clinical trials, is what I hear, in the institute. And here's a paper that we did together while Hilton was with us. Okay, another one. This one, now we're moving away from Bellio. We're doing Paulistas. And this is Giulio Aliberti, who was a visiting fellow from 1998 to 2004. Giulio was a really smart, is a really smart guy. And he had made some really, I think, some really exciting discoveries in the lab. Here are three of his papers. He did remain in the U.S. He didn't go back, and he's now, after an academic career, serving as a senior science advisor at the Office of AIDS Research. So if you guys want NIH contacts, you can just call Giulio, because he knows what's going on in funding there. So that was Giulio. And then at this time, the lab shifted, and someone referred to this earlier today. And that is, I decided that I wanted to work on TB. Why did I want to work on TB? Well, it was partially egotistical. I thought because if I could do the kind of stuff that Ricardo was doing with Toxo, I could do it with TB. That was extremely naive, because it's a much more complicated disease, but it's an absolutely fascinating and very, very important disease. It's still the number one killer in the world in terms of infectious agents. And the community of TB is really exciting. It's people doing so many different parts of the disease and treatment, and I really thought that this would be a good move for me. Okay, Liz, there she is. So have I got the timing right for you, Liz? I don't know what's going on here, but is that when you came? Yes. Oh, I'm really doing well here. So Liz, you already heard from her own presentation this morning, trained with Val and Ricardo, and she highlighted it herself in her talk, but I wanted to just mention that she published this paper on type 1 interferon and MTB infection, and also collaborated work with the clinical work on T-cell responses. She data. And he's also, lately, he's been sending me these articles. He's a crusader for advancing education of clinical researchers in Brazil. He's written a lot about this. So he's definitely a major success story, but in the north. Okay, 2 more to go. All right, Diego Costa, not the football star. Okay, I think Bruno Andrade is also a football star, is that right? Yeah, okay. So some reason they all come to me. I don't know. I don't know why. I have no football skills. So here it goes. So he trained at USP, but in Ribeirão Preto, and Diego's great. He's performed some really groundbreaking work on the role of heme metabolism in MTB infection, and he even came up with a host-directed therapy concept based on this. And he's now a professor in the Department of Immunology at USP, and there is one of his articles that actually made the cover of a journal. So I feel I'm kind of bragging about these people, but they're you, so it's okay, right? Okay, so, all right. Back to the future, I call this slide. So this is Eduardo Amaral. So we were talking about him at lunch today. So the thing I want you to know about this, and I feel really very sentimental about this, Teresa Kipnis, as you know, passed away from cancer. And it was a rough time. But one of the things, when I last saw her, she said, do me a favor, take this person to your lab. It's going to work out. He's fantastic. I think he's got what it takes. He's got passion for science. And so, of course, I always did what Teresa told me to do. And that's what I did. And Eduardo came. And he was, at that time, a sandwich student with Regina in USP, and then later came to our group as a visiting research fellow, and when I closed my lab, that was one of the things I had to deal with. Poor Eduardo, what's going to happen to him? Well, he wound up taking a job with Catherine Meyer-Barber, who's my close colleague in the TB field at the NIH. But anyway, Eduardo's amazing. He's an expert on the innate immune response, oxidative stress, and iron metabolism in TB infection or mycobacterium infection. And this is just a testimony to him. This is the kind of scientist you want. These are three papers, Nature Microbiology, JXMed twice, all built on his work, his ideas, he's wonderful. So keep an eye on Eduardo. Try to bring him back if you can. Anyway, so I'm winding up here. So this is a list of all those people. I didn't mention 2 people for time's sake, and that's Elise and Caio, and one from Ricardo's group, one from Regina's group, and so they were with us a shorter time, but I have to say, I'm proud to say that each of them had a first author paper from the lab. So we're going to wind up now. So I want to, and I'm proud of this, all but 3 of those trainees that I showed you returned to Brazil to pursue their careers. And many of them, as I told you, I'm very proud of, hold leadership positions in Brazilian biomedical science. And this may not seem very peculiar to you, but I'll tell you, if those were Chinese people, I told you, only 3 of them would have gone back. The Brazilians come home, which is great. It's wonderful. And so that's why one of the things why this has worked out so nicely. So what were the secrets why this happened? This is where I want you guys to think about this and see how you feel about it. So this is something that we both did together that worked out. So let's figure out what we did right for a change, right? So numero the high quality and motivation and passion for research. Brazilian trainees. Andy mentioned this morning. I was really glad that he did. Brazilians make great scientists. And then, of course, there was the common interest that we all had in parasitic and other infectious diseases, and for us, opportunities to work with patient populations that are not available in the US. Also mentioned by our colleagues earlier, avid interest of Brazilian scientists in immunology and their strong immunology community. I think there's a really vibrant immunology community. I've been to, around the world with seeing different immunology communities. You have one of the best, as far as I'm concerned. And then here's another things that may be more trivial, but I don't know. It's the ability, oh yeah, sorry, this is very important, I skipped over it. Excellent suggestions from Teresa, Giovanni, Ricardo, Bahal, of motivated young scientists. They picked the people, they said, Alan, these people should go to you. And that, I'm so grateful for them for doing that. And then also, Ricardo could speak to this, the ability to maintain trainees for long periods of time so they can actually develop their own area of research, and both Diego and Edu certainly have, and of course Ricardo did way back. And then also the fact that we maintain these collaborative links with US labs and institutions following a return to Brazil. I think that's been very important, and the fellows have helped do that. We've done it. So all of this is just great. And so what did I do? I keep on thinking about this, because maybe I really don't deserve any credit. I have an enthusiastic fondness for Brazil and Brazilians, as Andy does. He's another gringo who's given you that message. And then I think this is important, and it may be trivial, the hot seat. Major emphasis on teaching trainees English language and paper writing skills, and then pushing them to publish, present their work at seminars and conferences. Helping them with establishing collaborations and elsewhere, at the NIH and elsewhere. I help them do job hunting through my contacts with you guys. And also, listen, the really nice thing of maintaining connections with investigators in Brazil and welcoming them back for visits. And you're all welcome back if you can make it. So this is all, I think, if I did anything, that's what I did. And so that's it. So this is a wonderful picture of many of the people I spoke about. And I'm sorry that it's all brasileiros. I need a picture with brasileiros. So if anybody wants to volunteer for this picture, I would need it for to show this. But anyway, I really, this lecture is also a thank you to you for everything you've done for my career over the years. I'm going to end on a little bit of a sour note, but you'll know why I'm doing it, and it has to do with the comments that were made earlier during my introduction. Okay, I've been telling you how wonderful it is. Some of you young people are saying, hey, we got to go to the NIH, okay? This is the way to success, okay? And I think you're right. So what's going on right now? So we can still take you, as the answer. We're accepting, because you're from Brazil and you're not from some other country that might be labeled as, whatever, there's not an issue. But the problem is the visas. So, and the visa situation fluctuates back and forth. So, at the moment, it's looking good. So you have to, that's your main limitation. And the other thing that's changed now is we can't take people with Brazilian money. They have to be funded from the US. So you can send a sandwich student to us, but we have to pay for it. So that's the difference now. And then this is the downer, is we have this looming threat of a 38% NIH budget cut, which will be devastating if it happens. And it's going to limit, but not exclude. There'll be still some money, but it's going to be very, very hard to take people in with that kind of a cut. So I wanted to end with just this one point. Please be patient and support our academic community during this difficult period. Thank you. Okay. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Alguém quer fazer alguma pergunta, comentário?
Now, just remember, I'm in a politically delicate situation, so don't get me into trouble. You know, I might not be able to get back into my country, so. Yeah.
Enfim. My name is Luisa. It's nice to meet you.
Hey.
Oh, agora ligou. It's nice to meet you. It's my first year here in UFRJ, so I'm a little nervous to talk about it, so I'll try my best. Recently, in the last month, we saw in the internet that the government of United States was canceling the most important project of AIDS and HIV. So, and here in Brazil, in the last week, we were talking about the non-vision of vertical transmission of HIV. So the mother and the baby will be safe all the moment of the pregnancy. So if you could talk about the last financial of science coming from a country that we all in all our lives were seeing like giving this access to science. So if you could talk about a little bit, because that makes me a little anxious about my future in science, and I think that can be a thing with my friends of university. And it's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm really happy to have a moment to talk about it.
Well, thank you for the comment and questions. So all I can tell you is you could be a gringa standing right there, and you would have the same concerns, because, and maybe worse, because you have your own establishment here. You have your own funding. Our funding is being stripped at many levels. So, and it's particularly devastating for me to see it affecting foreign projects. And as I mentioned, one of the things I work on is TB, and there it's devastating. And TB is a disease that has to be controlled. I mean, you have to monitor patients and treat them in the community. And a lot of that money is being stripped away. HIV, as I think you referred to HIV?
Yeah.
HIV is another one. So, I mean, I can only tell you that it's a terrible situation, and I don't have an answer. But we need you. We need you to stay in science, and this may pass. A lot of people come up to me today and say, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay. You lived through a bad period here, and you got through it." But you know, you're actually. I'm glad you got up and made your remarks, because you're the thing I'm most worried about. I want you all to be, to enjoy this. I don't know if you sensed it, how much I enjoyed this career that I had. It was wonderful. Look at the wonderful people I got to meet and interact with, and it's a wonderful life. And so just stick with it, And unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about this situation. And my colleagues are, as you might imagine, very, very stressed.
I imagine it's a pleasure to hear from you that we young people, we young students and young science have this type of place in the researches. Thank you.
So the other thing I wanted to say is that, and I've talked to a number of people about this, another way to think about this is that you may be the best people to do this stuff now, not us. Okay? So yeah, it's a challenge to you. I mean, you have a vibrant community. You have a lot of interest in infectious disease. Maybe Brazil should become, the center that we're not anymore. So that's a good reason for you to stay and get that PhD and become famous. Okay?
I think we have time for one more question, and Leda has the question.
Hi.
Thank you for everything that you did for me. My question is, during our nightmare years, the Brazilian Academy of Science and the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science were very outspoken and very noisy. And I don't see this happening in the U.S. Why?
Oh, that is a wonderful question. And I don't have an answer, but just recently, the NIH just did this. A bunch of young scientists at the NIH actually, so our new director, I'm feeling very uncomfortable talking about this. Please don't, keep it in the room if you can. A bunch of young scientists actually, our new director said he's willing to listen to different opinions. And so they said, okay, you want to hear different opinions, we'll tell you our opinion. And that is that you're destroying our science. Yeah.
Paulo Pimenta wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
A long time.
Okay.
NIH.
Yeah, so Paulo is another, he didn't work in my lab, but he worked in a colleague of David Sachs, who I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. No, I just like to say that the first time that I heard about Ricardo Gazinelli was in your home, in a barbecue that you have over there.
Yeah.
Because you used
Churrasco,
to have
right? We used to have churrascos. Yeah.
Always have churrasco there.
Yeah.
And then you told me like that, a young guy is coming from Brazil to your lab.
Yeah.
And then I'd like that you help him to establish in Rockville. And then I help Ricardo to put the kids in the school, etc., with my wife. And that,
oh, that's
that
right,
was
yeah.
the first time that I heard about Ricardo when you asked me that. And it was a great pleasure because after that, you become a very friend. Actually, Ricardo, Antoniana, correctly, and you were living in the same community, and you community every day by car, etc.
Yeah.
Then just my memory here, just
yeah, I see we have a lot of sentimental feelings about
Yeah.
that time, right? Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
because that I love to be here to listen you and all the interaction that you stand much more here about what's happened with Ricardo and the other Brazilian here.
It's a wonderful story. I'm telling you. You think about it. It's wonderful. It's with later with all this bad stuff happening. Here's a wonderful story to tell. The story of all of us. And it worked, and we want to keep it going. And so the trainees, wherever you are, courage, right?
They're going to take you to the restaurant with the bus.
Okay.
Gente, para quem pediu, tem a senha do ônibus, ele está aqui fora, em frente à reitoria, tá? Vocês levam lá?
Okay, so if I have to ask a favor. They don't let me